Welcome, everyone, to our Sunday Wisdom session. Today, I'm speaking to you from Durban, South Africa. We had lectures earlier this week in Mauritius. Wonderful audience, a lot of warm hospitality. And today, we had a session this morning on happiness. And one of the key qualities that will result in a more peaceful and happier life is the quality we're going to study today. So the quality of Ksami is to be forgiving. Ksami is beautiful quality because it incorporates the different aspects of the personality in order to practice it. And we know of this word forgiving or forgiveness in various faiths. And it's such a powerful central theme in a lot of faiths. My question to all of you is why? Why is forgiveness important? Why should we practice it? Sonia says to move on. Okay.
Because the opposite is a burden.
The opposite is a burden. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So lack of forgiveness burdens us sometimes for years and decades, and only we carry that burden.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going to say.
Same. Forgiveness is a spiritual practice because it is a conscious, deliberate letting go of negative feeling and resentment. Often in the case where a person has done harm to us. Now, when we talk about forgiveness, it's the letting go of this negative feeling that we have within ourselves. So, as Paresh mentioned, it is an unburdening. So you're doing it, first of all, because it makes you feel lighter. If somebody else has done harm, why are you suffering? If someone else has done something negative, no doubt to you, you carrying it makes you the victim again and again and again. Does this mean that the person should not meet with justice? That there not should be repercussions? Or that we should just forget? Forgiveness does not mean that. It does not mean forgetting. It does not mean that the person goes unpunished. But the negative feeling, release it. What is the point of the negative feeling? And here's the interesting thing is that the mind actually gets a pleasure from the negative feeling. It is a pleasure, but it is a pleasure that makes you feel worse. So instrument like, or an emotion that we experience like pity, emotion that we experience such as doubt, it feeds the ego. And especially in forgiveness, when you feel you have been wronged, we go through it and replay it over and over again because it caters to the ego. And though you get a pleasure from it, in the end, it's detrimental to us. And there are some beautiful phrases. So we're going to cover some of the reasons why we should practice forgiveness. And the first one is simply, the only person that it's hurting is ourselves, number one. So if we want to practice this, it's the intellect coming into play in our personality and realizing this emotion is not doing me any good. I forgive. I let live. And that's what forgiveness is. It's letting live. Deciding to live on. Not hold on to that. Now, you may continue to go along and take legal recourse. You may find other ways where the punishment is appropriate, but in your heart, in your head, in your mind, let go. Why? Because that emotion is a tumor. There's a beautiful quote by the Lord Buddha. He says, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And that's what we do. I'm so angry with that person, I'm going to make myself miserable. It doesn't make sense. Being in South Africa, we get inspired by the story of Nelson Mandela, an example, embodiment of forgiveness, in the sense, being imprisoned for 27 years. And many expected that there would be a reversal. Those that were in power would now be oppressed. And he says this, he says, as I walked out of the prison towards freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and my hatred behind, I would still be in prison. And that's it. The first reason to practice forgiveness is for yourself, for your peace of mind. The second reason is a little bit more difficult because it is requiring far more growth, far more maturity. So the first one, it can appeal to everybody because everybody wants to be a little bit more peaceful, sleep easier. But the second one is, what kind of person do you want to be? Another person has inflicted harm, injury, hurt to you, has been insensitive to your feelings, has betrayed your trust, has betrayed years of friendship. And we see it as such a strong emotional reaction to it, yes. But how you respond, how you behave is up to you. And whilst you might say, according to everyone that I know, my reaction, my feeling is justified. The question we should ask ourselves is, what am I striving for? What kind of person would I like to be? And Mark Twain puts it beautifully. He says, forgiveness is the fragrance a violet releases as the foot crushes it. So can you be like the violet? Somebody is crushing you. And what is the usual response? We want to return the hurt. We want to return the pain. Imagine if we could respond differently, with maturity, with growth, with reflection, even positivity. And that's the fragrance that they are talking about. Someone is harming you. And your response is, can I be of service? And when you look at it, it seems unrealistic. But it's possible. And it's possible by not allowing the world to dictate how you should feel and how you should feel at what incidents. And when you do feel, training yourself to react and respond differently. Forgiveness in this aspect, where you take a level of growth and you say, I forgive you. This person did not know better. I am more mature. I forgive you. What is the problem do you see in this kind of forgiveness? Do you see any fault in it? I forgive you. You did not know what you were doing. I forgive you. I'm the bigger person. Do you see any fault in this type of forgiveness?
There's still some element of subtle ego creeping into that perspective. I
Yes.
am the better one. I forgive you. You did not know better, etc.
Yes. So why it will give you peace, no doubt. This approach will give you peace. But what we're doing there is, in order to forgive, we put the other person lower. And by putting the other person lower, we accentuate this ego. I say, I'm better than you. That's what we're saying. I'm superior to you, therefore I forgive you. There is a word that they use to describe such growth, where it's not in a superior stance, but it's in a elevation of maturity. And it's not that you see the other person as inferior, you just understand. And it's when we elevate ourselves to a higher level, we don't see the injury as something personal. We see it as an expression of that person's nature, and you came into orbit with that person's nature, into proximity, and it was just that person being that person. But the only way you can forgive, let live, understand that person's nature is from your elevation. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Balaha, which means children. All children. What a way to look at it. Balaha is child. Balaha is children. And it is seeing everybody around you as spiritual children. Why? Because you've raised yourself. You've understood that not everybody has the same background as you. Not everyone has the same education as you. Not everybody has the same upbringing as you. So if you are in a particular place, you'll understand that if you're driving, each person is going to try and get ahead. Is going to try and overtake you if you're at a particular speed. You understand the nature of a place. We had the wonderful experience in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, where whilst the driving can be aggressive, nobody presses the hooter. Nobody honks. Can you imagine a city with 20 million people? Nobody hooting? Incredible. So you understand in that place, when they are to express their agitation, they might accelerate aggressively, overtake you. In another place, even to say hello, they press the hooter. They're going past, you recognize somebody in the other car, you slam the hooter. Doesn't matter what the other drivers are doing, you want to reach out to say hello to your friend. It's accepted. You understand the place, you understand the reaction. And because you understand it, you don't fight about it. It's like you're hosted for a dinner and you're with the host family. There are children there, and there are a few pieces of dessert, some small chocolate tarts on the table. And you've had a good few, but you would probably like one or two more. And you see that there's only a few left. And then there are two pieces. And then the child goes and takes both the pieces. What is your reaction? You had your eye on one of those pieces. What would you say to the child? Would you say anything at all? Some people do. And they'll give a lecture to the child about unselfishness. Look, why are you taking two? Take one at least. You know, I'm a guest here. You're supposed to give me both. Will you give a lecture to the child? You understand the nature of the child is to enjoy chocolate, is to want a sweet. And you understand the child has no ill feeling towards it. The child is just being a child, sees pleasure, grabs it. But if it was an adult doing that, how would you behave? And why would you behave differently?
Awareness of the other.
Awareness of the other? No, so why would it be okay if the child does it, takes both the chocolates? But if an adult at the same party takes both the chocolates, doesn't look around, doesn't offer you one of them, takes both the chocolates, why are you not okay with the adult doing it? You are okay with the child doing it. Michael.
Well, I guess I was just saying that the adult, you expect that the adult will have some awareness of the needs of others, where a child you do not expect to do that.
That's it. And it is that expectation that causes us all the frustration, expecting others to behave in a particular way. That particular adult is a spiritual balaha, child, children. They do not have the values, they do not have the self-awareness to look around. But we think because of a particular age, because of a particular association, education, they should be at a standard where they understand acceptable norms. But acceptable norms according to who? According to you. Each one will behave according to their value system, their mind, their intellect, their likes and dislikes. So when you say that you are forgiving out of growth, it's not a great thing. Actually, all it is understanding people as they are and not resisting them. And that is a beautiful quality. But what do? We have a negative feeling when people behave in a way that we don't like, in a way that we disagree, in a way that we don't approve. That letting go consciously of that feeling and allowing people, when I say allowing also is the wrong word. Understanding people will behave according to their culture, to their customs, to their upbringing, to their beliefs, and I'm okay with it. Why are you okay with it? You've got no other choice. People will be what they're going to be. You can either get onto it or you can carry on grumbling and complaining. I'm saying we do it with children. Why don't we do it with others? And it's just raising that vision and understanding in that particular area that adult is like a child. And then what happens? Look at the change of emotion. So the frustration changes, and the frustration changes to sympathy, empathy. And then perhaps if you had one tart on your plate, you might even offer it to the child. Offer it to the adult if we can get there. But this is the transformation of forgiveness. It takes a negative feeling, transforms it into a positive feeling. Takes the feeling of vengeance that makes it burns through you. That's the poison that burns through you. You take that negative feeling and it doesn't just transform you, it transforms the other person. William Shakespeare, he says a beautiful definition about mercy. In how it's twice blessed. It blesses the person that gives the mercy, the person that receives the mercy. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. Such a beautiful quality. And why it's so important in times of today, but throughout history, is because it stops the cycle of hurt. Because as long as we harbor this negative feeling, then when we get an opportunity, we inflict harm. It could be a comment, it could be an action, it could be gossip, but we inflict that negative energy, that negative comment back into the cycle. How often so many of our relationships are damaged, not because of what the person said directly to us, but what we overheard or somebody told us indirectly what that person is saying about us. And what do? We do the same thing with their reputation. We put something negative, we talk about them negatively to another person, and we keep the cycle of hurt going. When we do this, hurt begets hurt. And that person you can expect to hurt you again. But when you are not affected by the hurt, when you respond instead of hurt in kindness, there's no resistance anymore. And because there's no resistance, it ends the cycle. And perhaps this is what we could need in society. Vengeance begets vengeance. Forgiveness dissolves it, at least from your side. So there's no cycle. There's no increase of the vengeance, of the negative feeling. Morris Maeterlinck, he puts it beautifully, because one is to assess and understand a person's not punctual. You understand that person's not punctual, you adjust, you adapt accordingly. You understand that a particular person might be grumpy in nature, critical in nature, you understand that, you accept it. But what happens when that behavior affects you? And when you get upset, how do you deal with that? How do you forgive that? How do you've assessed it, but how do you accept it, understand it, let go of the negative emotion? So Morris Maeterlinck gives us a very practical way to do it. He says this. He says, happy and blessed hour when wickedness stands forth revealed as goodness bereft of its guide. Now see the change here. When we see wickedness, when we read the newspaper, we get angry, we get upset. When we see corruption, we get furious. But what if you saw it as, instead of wickedness, and it's the same thing, goodness minus guide. That person is goodness, but they don't have a guide. And if they had a guide, why would they be good? If they came to Sunday Vedanta classes, they would be noble and kind like you. Why? How can you forgive selfishly? How is it goodness without a guide? The path to growth, the path to evolution is through unselfishness. So when a person takes, when a person is selfish, no doubt there is a short-term pleasure, but it does not give you that long-term peace. So people are seeking for happiness. Everybody is seeking it, but they're not seeking it with the intellect. So they're going where they can find a little bit of immediate pleasure, not realizing that's going to agitate them in the long run. Service, working for a higher cause is what's going to take each one of us to happiness. They haven't discovered it. They don't have access to the knowledge. They don't have access to the philosophy. And therefore, they're going to behave the way they're going to behave. If you show a child in one hand, candy bars. In the other hand, a wad of notes, a couple of dollar bills. The child is going to pick the candy. But if the child had the knowledge that the dollar bills would buy maybe 50 more candies, it would choose this. You would choose this. Why? Because you have the knowledge of it. You have the knowledge of how this will give you more than the candy. But the child doesn't have it. Similarly, the person who harms another, the person who's selfish, doesn't realize what they're doing. The picture of forgiveness is Jesus Christ, who was physically tortured, crucified, emotionally rejected, intellectually dishonored. And imagine having all that negative feeling directed towards you. And his thought is, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They are ignorant. Another way of saying children. They are ignorant. They have no idea what they're doing. But you say, but this person knows what they're doing. They don't really know. Have you heard of the story of Frankenstein, the monster? In the book Frankenstein, written by Mary Shelley, the scientist brings to life a monster. And this monster's whole goal in life is to destroy its creator, the scientist. Why? The monster is actually seeking love, seeking companionship. But because the scientist rejected the monster, it became a monster. And that's the idea. And Mary Shelley says, no person is evil for the sake of being evil. It doesn't make sense. He only mistakes it for the happiness, the good he seeks. That's the good part. That's the happiness that they're seeking. So imagine if we could see this, that here's a person, they've stolen from me, they have hurt me. Why did they do it? They have mistook it that they will get happiness from it. There will be no happiness from there. And that hard emotion that you have, that negative emotion, turns to sympathy, empathy. The difficulty is we personalize it. We make it about ourselves. It's just another person seeking happiness. And perhaps if they had the same value systems backing as us, they would have behaved differently. And this is why forgiveness is such a fine emotion. But we also have to practice it to ourselves. And often we can be very harsh, very judgmental about ourselves. And I find that when people get into this subject, the positive thing about Vedanta is that it gives you a picture of what perfection looks like, of what peace of mind looks like, of what a noble way to react is. And when we find ourselves falling short, we become very tough. My mind, it won again. Oh, why didn't I use my assessment? I didn't use my intellect. And we have regret, we have remorse. Just as we assess others and we understand others, let us assess ourselves. Understand ourselves. I'm not perfect. I didn't claim to be perfect. I'm a work in progress. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to try not to, but it's going to happen. And when those mistakes happen, just as you would to another person, the same points that we gave, growth, understanding, seeing it as only searching for the happiness that you want, see that in yourself as well. Now, from the absolute level, why does a seeker of truth forgive? Why does a devotee of God, a seeker of God, forgive? And it is because they see that divinity, they see that God in one and every being. So just as we said good, they see divinity in every being, different expressions of that divinity. How can you hate another being if it's all an expression of divinity? And to go to the highest truth, there is only oneness. There is no you and me. There is only one spirit throbbing through all of us. And that spirit is me. That spirit is you. That spirit is the self, Brahman, Atman. So when you say forgive, who's forgiving who? It's like all the waves belong to the ocean. When you've understood you're the ocean, who forgives who? All oneness. And that is why a seeker of truth, one who's understood the nature of truth, no ill feeling, forgiveness. Life will be life. Each one will act according to their values. Their goal is to seek pleasure, happiness. Sometimes they do it well. Sometimes they do it out of ignorance. Forgive. Let live. Assess and understand. This is the section on forgiveness. Now we take up the question for the week. And remember, after the question for the week, we'll open up to the question and answers from your study. So I recall that we had 2 questions from last week. I hope those of you who had those questions will bring it up again today. So we'll cover the question for the week. Here it is on the screen. How does one avoid antagonizing others while following one's own conviction? Nice question. And it seems like there's only one of 2 paths. The one path is you're clear about your conviction, you bulldoze anybody who opposes it. And then you've got the other side where you don't have conviction in what you're doing. So all you do is just appease and please other people. You live according to what other people say you should do. You, God forbid, hurt their feelings. But it is possible to do both. In the sense, to thine own self be true. And it must follow as the night, the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man, says William Shakespeare. He says, be true to your convictions. Antagonizing comes when you try to convince other people of your conviction. That's the antagonizing part. So, nothing wrong with being determined, focused, working towards your conviction. But there is everything wrong when we try to convince other people that our conviction is right. Same idea. Live and let live. You follow your conviction, I follow my conviction. And as long as we both following our convictions, we are being true. The other side of it is, the reason why we don't follow our convictions sometimes is because of the opinions of others. So what happens if somebody else imposes their opinion on you? So they impose their conviction on you. That is where you draw the line. We can coexist, but when you infringe, when you start dictating what I should do, no, thank you. And sometimes the mind has this weakness to please others, and we feel so hesitant in pursuing something that we think is right, but what will the other person say? And here's the thing. As long as we try to please others, there's never an end to it. It is impossible that you are going to please everyone all the time. In fact, the more you please, the more they want to be pleased. And then you're not being true. Remember what Shakespeare said? To thine own self be true. And it must follow as the night, the day, consistent. When you are consistent to your conviction, then you cannot be false to yourself or to any other person. The other person starts understanding what you're about because you're consistent. But if you change your mind, if you vary, if you hesitate, then naturally they will take advantage of the hesitation because you have not been consistent. One of the things we have been consistent about is early nights. Now, especially when we come to South Africa and there are so many people that know us, especially at a personal level, there are many invitations for dinners, but a dinner means a late night, and a late night means not so fresh in the morning. The study gets compromised. But our value is those mornings are sacred. That's when the self-development happens. That's when the evolution happens. So we got to keep that safe. We've got to preserve the early nights. So if somebody is sincere in spending time with us, look, not dinner. How about lunch? Or a tea? Or a coffee? And in this way, the person could say, look, no, look, I can't do it, etc. But what you're doing is you're accommodating their wish. You may also decide you know you don't have the time for it. That's fine. You could try and accommodate the wish, but without compromising your values. And if the person says, no, you must come and it has to be on my convenience, my timing, no, thank you. Thank you, but no, thank you. Now, do you have to give a lecture about early mornings? Do you know early morning is Brahma Muhurta? We have read in the Shastras that if you wake up between 4 and 6 a.m. is the ideal Sattva time where we can evolve and think. In fact, you should do it too. This is antagonizing. Holding your own firmly is not antagonizing another person. And when another person tries to do it to you, be careful of this weakness to please others. We now open the session to Q&A. All right, so we have some questions in the chat, and we'll start with Sonia. Yes, go for it.
Yes, just I love this discussion on Kshama. One thing that I tell myself is if we expect God to forgive us, then why do we not forgive each other? Because we know we can do wrong, we can be wrong, and we ask for forgiveness from God, but we're afraid and we feel vulnerable when we ask others for forgiveness out of ego, or forgiving others again out of ego. And I think that also has helped me understand that, I am not without fault, and so neither are others, and let them grow at their own pace. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the first one with respect to God, the idea that God forgives us because all-knowing, and that all-knowing comes from all understanding. And because of the growth, the disparity in growth, God sees everybody as children. So the same thing we're doing here is we're elevating our understanding of life, where we understand people's motives, we understand the base of the motives is to seek happiness, pleasure. And because we understand it, we don't personalize it. So when we get the wrong side of it, where it's misguided, instead of seeing it as a vindictive attack on ourselves, we see it as misguided pursuit for happiness, which is what it is. But because of the lack of understanding, because of the ego, we take it personally. I got hurt by you, therefore I will try and hurt you. Now, when we ask for forgiveness from another person, often it is to relieve our own conscience. And yes, it may help if the other person says that, but really it is about you learning from your mistake and forgiving yourself. That same understanding, that same assessment, I did not have a strong intellect earlier, I made a mistake, and to forgive yourself. More important than the other person's validation or the other person's forgiveness, because you may not get it, and it is not right to impose it on the other person. The person may or may not give it. And the same thing, when we decide to forgive, understanding not only do we give peace to ourselves, but we also give peace to the other person if they are seeking it. So the beauty of this path is it's all about your reaction and what is best for you in that situation. Okay, Sonia?
Yes, thank you.
Any live questions before I go to the chat questions?
Hi, Sudhakar.
Yes.
If you know somebody has done wrong and you're annoyed enough to say, I will forgive, but I have to have that time to get over that anger, and that can sometimes extend into days, and it's not immediate because you probably feel strongly about it. Is that okay? Or does it have to be immediate? The forgiveness.
No, it could. It's a
process.
It's a process of growth. So sometimes, depending on what it is, you're already at the level where you can immediately understand and forgive. Sometimes you may not be. And I think what you just said has so much of self-awareness that I would like to be this person that does not get angry by it, but at the moment I'm not. So I'm feeling this emotion. I don't want to say anything out of that emotion. So I need time. So the amount of self-awareness to articulate that, incredible. And then to communicate it to the person shows a lot of care. Now, the other person may not, because they might be anxious for the relationship to go back to the way it was, or they may be anxious for you to treat them a particular way immediately, or they feel remorse or regret, so they want you to move on quickly so they don't feel it. That's on them. But you've communicated your requirement. And the idea of communicating the requirement is that you do not hurt the person because of the emotion that you're feeling at the time. So it is helpful, and you have to be true to yourself. If you allow the emotion to vent, you will damage the relationship. So therefore, you're asking for space. You can't force the growth. You can't force the release of the feeling. It has to come from this reflection, this understanding. Just because we went through the points of forgiveness today doesn't mean all of us forgive now. All our enemies, no problem. We've got to work on each one because they're all different levels of intensity, different levels of value. We've got to work on those. So it's a process. At least we're aware of the process. Some will take less time, some will take more time, but I have a goal. I want to release these negative feelings that are keeping me captive.
Thank you.
Sudhakarji,
Yes, Sapna.
and yeah, an extension to what Smita said, it takes a while to kind of forgive, and therefore, we are aware and we don't vent out the feeling, and it takes a while to forgive. But after that, do we kind of assess the person better, or we kind of revisit the assessment of that person? Because we should not be getting hurt every time they kind of act the way. Therefore, is reassessment of that person or of that situation important, and do we do that?
Reassessment, yes, but I would say most likely the case is lack of assessment. There was no assessment of the person in the first place. Or it was a wrong assessment. So wrong assessment, yes, reassess. So as soon as, and it may not be hurt, as soon as there is a negative reaction in yourself to that situation or that person, it means something is wrong in your assessment. Fix it. It is difficult to fix it if you're very angry, so it may not be immediate. So wait for the anger to come down, so then you can think clearly with your intellect and then do the assessment. What went wrong? What did I not understand about my son, my husband, my colleague? What do I need to change? So I think last week we spoke about relating in the corporate place. Understand the nature of corporate. Each person is out there for themselves, for their career. So you're swimming with sharks, you have to outsmart. So know the nature of what you're doing, of what you're dealing with. So yes, as quickly as possible, reassess, assess, but do it when your intellect and your mind are clear, calm. This is how we solve. We must use agitation as a way to promote us to solve these problems in life. Okay, something negative happened. Why? What in my assessment, what in my understanding was missing? Okay. Got it. I'm fine. Razia.
Hi, Sadaka. I wanted to know, like Jesus when those people were throwing stones at him, and he was on the cross actually at that time, and he said to them, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Do you think that, forgiveness is essential? Can we go through life not forgiving people that have harmed us in some way? Or is it part of
Yes.
our growth?
growth has to be conscious and deliberate. And there are some who prefer to hold on to the ego, and they hold on to the hurt. And that is out of pride, that is out of their own idea of justice. And it makes you bitter. And the trouble is, what that person did may have been 20 years ago, but you're holding on to it for so long, it's disproportionate to the hurt that happened. And if you had been able, agile, mature enough to understand the mistake that the person made, it is possible to continue a relationship with that person. But the trouble is we get stuck in that negative feeling and we don't learn from it. So many do not practice forgiveness.
Okay,
One of
and
the
also,
one of the qualities that we've been talking to teenagers about, is about friendships. Because you find teen angst so much to do with their friends and what the friends are doing. And the trauma that they go through with a friend letting them down at that stage is so intense. So what we tell them is, why are you friends with certain people and not certain people? And it's because of common interests at that particular time. So your friends in primary school are not the same friends in high school, are not the same friends in university. So friends change, but we think they're permanent. And all it is a temporary giving each other what you want. And the moment that stops or changes, don't expect them to hang around. But this is not people forgetting you or people being mean. It's just the nature of people being people. So understand, in friendships, they must pass away. But if you hook onto a friendship expecting a primary school friendship to last throughout life, unlikely. You're going to be disappointed. They are there. Those are the quality ones that you hang on to, that you value, not hang on to because nothing is permanent, but you value those because it's based on something deeper than immediate transaction. So now we'll take up the questions from the chat. We've got a few. Okay. The person who used to be a close friend had a bad behavior, not the first time. Okay, so I forgive him, but should I be his friend again? So it depends on you. So Sergio, a person makes a mistake, you forgive that person for that mistake, but should you be a friend? And here's the thing, that mistake is part of the assessment of that person. So do not forget. When I say do not forget, it does not mean linger in that hurt or pain, but it means do not forget that that incident happened. That under these particular scenarios and context, that person behaved a particular way. Does it stop you from relating to that person in a better way in the future? Maybe, maybe not, depending on your assessment. So, for instance, if a person has stolen from you and you forgive the person, you let the person back in, I'm not sure I would allow them to be my accountant. I said, the person has a tendency, he's made this mistake. You know what? He can be my friend, but not in areas where there's an opportunity to take or steal or temptation. No problem. He can even be my closest friend, but not my accountant. So use the assessment to wisen our understanding of that person, and where it fits, allow it to fit. But that one quality does not have to spoil, or that one incident does not have to color the whole person. How do you not get angry? Reading the newspaper. The newspaper is designed to make you angry, upset. You've got to decide whether you're going to take the bait. So media is meant to be provocative. Unfortunately, good things doesn't sell. Happy things doesn't sell. But if you provoke somebody's anger, if you provoke them to be upset, sales happen. So you've got to decide whether you want to be somebody who supports this business or you read it for your entertainment. But if you're getting provoked, then they are succeeding. That's exactly what they want. So newspaper is designed for that. So it's like they're fishing and you keep taking the bait. Stop taking the bait. You can look at it, you can read it, but don't take the bait. Don't get upset. Don't get angry. Is continuous forgiveness of persons and situations not seen as a weakness by others? Mala, this is an important part of today. You can let go of the negative feeling, but allow justice to take its course. So you might go the full extent that is legally possible to punish the person because perhaps it needs to be made a lesson of. You might fire that particular person, but it's letting go of the negative feeling. But intellectually, might have to, you punish the person in order for the person to understand and learn, and the community around it as well. So forgiveness doesn't mean letting the person off. It may be that, but it should depend on that person's nature. I know there's the story in Les Miserables where the priest hosts a convict and that convict steals plates from him. And the next day, the police come and they find the convict and the stolen plates. And the priest says, "You made a mistake. He didn't steal the plates. I gave it to him." But the priest used his intellect. He didn't just forgive. He knew that this act would change this convict. And this convict later on becomes a giver, becomes a transformed person because of this act of kindness. But if he felt that this person was hard, he wouldn't change by it. He would say, "Yes, I gave him the plates. He stole the plates. Please put him in jail again." It depends on what is best for the situation. But in both situations, the priest would have been absolutely fine because forgiveness doesn't hold it in him. Is there a relationship between the intellect and the quality of being unselfish? How do we establish that? Yes. Yes and no. So you can be unselfish without a strong intellect. And unfortunately, many unselfish people do not have a strong intellect. So they get taken advantage of, they feel taken for granted. But a person who, out of understanding, chooses to be unselfish, that is a very high intellect. They're established in higher values. They understand all the ways that you could find loopholes to avoid tax, to take advantage of the government, but they choose to be of service to the government or to others because it gives them more happiness. That is a very high quality intellect. And that's what we're doing. We're developing our intellect to choose better. Paresh.
Thank you, Sudhakar. I'm sometimes intrigued by the opposite situation. We have discussed how lack of forgiveness is our burden and that we should forgive as per the teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. But to come back to your example of when we sometimes say, no, I cannot do that. And your example was of dinner because you have a sacred responsibility to yourself of waking up early. When we say no, and we say it politely and graciously as well, and yet we become the subject of the other person's lack of forgiveness. So we are now the subject of the lack of forgiveness rather than the proponent of lack of forgiveness. How do we handle that? Because we may have said something in good faith and politely and graciously.
That is the due diligence we should take when refusing someone, to give them the context, the background, because you wouldn't like to cause hurt unnecessarily. And that's the thinking behind it, because a person does it out of love, out of affection, and it seems like a rejection of affection.
Exactly.
And that's where the explanation behind it is important. Now, if they still don't understand, then it's them imposing their affection, their values on you. Do not fall a victim to appeasement and to pleasing others. That's where you got to hold firm. But do the due diligence. Try not to cause hurt. And this you can communicate. Why you think the way you think. Beyond the point the person doesn't understand, it's okay. You do you, I do me.
Thank you.
The last question for today, Kaushik. If we keep negative thoughts, it has a cause and effect, relationships. What we do today will determine our destiny future. Yes. And this is what I meant by this cycle of hurt. If we don't forgive, it's we harbor negative feeling, and that negative feeling gives way to negative action, and that negative action has an effect. The person finds out about it, experiences it. Sometimes you can just feel that a person is speaking negatively to you, negatively about you. And they walk into a room and you're just angry. How have we given the person that control? And are we sure? And sometimes you may be sure, sometimes it may just be that assumption. Choose to release it. This person does not know me well enough. If they knew me well enough, they would fall in love with me. They just don't have enough information about me. If they're open, I'd be happy to give them the opportunity. Doesn't mean you go and clarify, doesn't mean you go and justify yourself to that person, if there's a context. But otherwise, people don't want to forgive and don't necessarily want their misconceptions clarified. So if there's an opportunity, a genuine misunderstanding, miscommunication, please clear it up. But if not, you're in charge of your feelings. Let go of the negativity from your side. And when the person in communication, in conversation, they can feel, depending on their level of self-awareness, they can feel the lack of resistance in you, there's an opening. There's a chance. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We continue next Sunday.